I think we have everyone. I'm going to give it a couple minutes. Just make sure we have a quorum. We're missing like one more person. I'm gonna just send them a quick email. And I will send you guys, here's the public notice, just so you have it in hand, as always. And I think there are some new people, so we want to just do a quick round of intros again. That'll be our welcome. Just name, pronouns, that's it. So I'm Hennessy Pimentel, and my pronouns are she, her. Joe?
Everyone, I'm Joe Bagley. My pronouns are he, him. Bob?
I'm Bob Allison.
Kid?
Hi, everyone. My name is Kid Wong Street Channel I.
Lauren Sharp. My pronouns are she, her.
Okay. Kim?
Hi everyone, my name is Kim Villapuerte Barzola and my pronouns are she, her.
Kristen?
Kristen Lafferty, and I'm she, her.
Dory?
Dory Klein, I'm she, her.
Kayla?
Kayla Skillen, she, her.
Carolyn?
Carolyn Goldstein, she, her.
Thank you. Murray?
It's Murray Miller.
Thank you. So seven. We have 7 people still. We need 8 for a quorum. Well, there's one person missing, so I will just send her a quick email.
Hennessy, can we put the link to the event in the Zoom link in the meeting invite, just to make it easier to find in calendars? Yeah. Awesome, thanks.
Nope, I can't do that. Just one second. Okay, there we go. Okay, great. So I have for the next thing, order of business, approval of meeting minutes. So I'm not sure if you guys were able to read them through. We can save that. Yeah. Good.
I do have one correction to make.
Mm-hmm.
Is this the time to do that?
Yeah.
So under order of business,
Mhm.
Roman numeral 2. During the meeting, the co-chair selection was put to a vote, and both Lydia Lowe and Bob Allison were unanimously voted in as co-chairs.
Oh,
Joe, I'm sorry, you've been demoted.
Bye, everyone.
I will be happy to defer to Joe. I didn't realize he was a candidate, which he should be.
Okay, sorry. That's Lydia Lowe was the co-chair of the other of another subcommittee. So I'll change that. Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah, Bob, you and I are co-chairs.
Okay.
All right, so we'll change that now. Is there anything else that you guys might have got similar to that? I was doing both at the same time, so I think that's what happened. No? All right, so otherwise, all good?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Amazing. So. Okay, great. Oh, before we get started on the next thing, which is just the review of work, I wanted to say I spoke to Tom Broom, who's the city lawyer, and to get feedback on what we could do outside of the commission, like how we could interact with one another. And he said he's never seen a case like this before because it's so large that it's a little bit difficult for you guys to plan things outside of these meetings, which he is usually recommended, but because of the nature of this commission, he understands why. So a couple of things that he said to be able to, for example, like Tatiana was working on the BPS or like the school curriculum stuff, and other people had expressed interest in that. And he said that as long as it was less than a quorum for that this subcommittee, if that subcommittee was less than a quorum of 8, then it should be okay. And best practice is just to have them as public meetings. And emails are a little bit tricky. Emails and communication, virtual communication are a little bit tricky. So to have me CC'd or have me meet with you guys as much as possible, just for transparency reasons. He did say that he wanted to ask these questions to the Attorney General's office just to clarify, and he would get back to me soon, but he said just in the interim, I think that that's best practice. So whoever we can at the end talk about who was interested in the curriculum subcommittee. I think it was I think Colin, you said you'd be interested. I know Tatiana is leading the charge there, and I think one more person. I'm not sure, but we can do that at the end. And I can start trying to coordinate that and run that by the law department just to be safe. Yeah. All right. So then the next thing we have is a review of work. I sent out all of the spreadsheets and the folders and things like that, just so that you guys could have some time to review it and some time to update it. And I can put it in the chat if you guys need, but just wanted to have you guys start the conversation on what you guys have done, what you guys are thinking, and any known gaps.
Hennessy, is it cool if I take it from here?
Yes.
Okay. Tatiana, recognizing that you're not feeling well, and the issues that came up with communications, are you able to or wanting to give an update on the curricula aspects of the project?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Yeah, there's no update to give. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened between the last meeting and now, but I do have a list of folks that I'm going to reach out to. I just didn't have everyone's contact info. And so, Hennessy, now, given what you said, it's okay as long as I CC you on emails and invite you to any meetings. Mostly, I need everyone's contact info. And there was one person who wasn't here who you didn't give me the name, but you said that they're on the commission and they they work in BPS, I think you said. They do curriculum stuff. So I had no idea who that person was.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've sent out a website. It's been a while with all of everyone's information in each subcommittee, but I might just have to make it like a blog post on the City of Boston so that you guys can just have it as a one-stop shop there. So what I'll do is I'll do that and I'll send you guys an updated list with emails. Now, I was also told by Tom that it might be best practice to get you guys City of Boston emails just because anything that is talked about with this might be subject to the information email requests. So he figures it's best practice for you guys to get those. So I will try to get those out to you guys as soon as possible. And for now, we'll just work through email, and I'll send that out after this meeting.
And Hennessy, since you and my emails are public records subject, then CCing us would work for now, or you especially would work for as inclusive of, okay, cool.
Mhm.
I think you said that there was Hennessy, you said that there was a person from BPS now. I don't know if they're in the room right now, or
They are
can you
not.
give us more information about them?
Yeah, so it's Dr. Angela Headley Mitchell. I think she actually does do curriculum development. Let me just double check my information.
What was the last name? Headley Mitchell?
Headley Mitchell.
Okay.
Yes. So she is, I'm not sure that this is the most updated stuff, but she is she's part of she's executive director of humanities. And she works in curriculum development specifically, if I'm remembering correctly.
So that they seem ideal for this. Okay, great. So when we can get all the emails together, then Tatiana, we can hopefully get an update next meeting next month. Is that how they go monthly? Yeah. About that. Okay, does anybody have anything that they want to add to or comment about regarding curricula before we move on to, I think, timelines would be next. Of a timelines component, not timelines of the project overall. Okay. So the spreadsheet that was sent around, there's two that went around, and if you haven't had a chance to look at it, please, please, please do so as soon as possible. The intentions of those two lists are the internal list of ideas, concepts, dates, places that we all kind of collectively can come up with that we will then be expanding upon, and then well, we get to discuss how it goes from there. Yeah, Kristen?
Yeah, so talking about the timelines, I had started doing some work in the spreadsheet. And in doing that, I realized, I was using, I'm not sure how many of you know Jim Vrabel. He used to work for the city, but he published a book around 2005, I think it was, called When in Boston. And I had been using that as like the source to get a lot of the dates that I was entering. And then I realized he has put together like a Boston history database. So he's like done all this work. And so I was like, why should we be doing this again if he's already done it? And so I reached out to him last week to see the status, because he had come out to the archives probably around 2019 to give us a demonstration of it. And he had been looking for a home for it. And he's been looking for a home for a long time and still doesn't have one. So that's the latest. But he had said that the library had shown interest. And I'm not sure if anybody from the library is here today, but of hosting this database. And I mean, and it sounds like it would be like incredibly valuable for what we're trying to do here in terms of the timeline.
I'm from the Boston Public Library. He's approached the BPL and his project is under consideration. There's no decision made right now. I will report back if there is an update.
This seems like a perfect thing that this commission could do. I mean, get the city or the library or someone to make this available because it's such a great resource. And you're right, we would be duplicating what he's already done.
Right. Like that's what I was thinking, that the commission could be a good way to get his project out there for people.
Yes.
Because when he brought it to us several years ago, it was great. And he's done so much research.
Yes, it is. And he's made it so you can actually search, buildings or events
Right.
or any issue you can actually trace through the history of the city.
Right. And so when I did reach out to him last week, he said that he'd be willing to help the commission in any way, if he could. So
I did add him as an archive on the other spreadsheet. Just
oh, great. I didn't notice that. Great.
Yeah.
What does this look like? I haven't seen it before. Is it a standalone website or is it
Well,
a database?
this is his book. I'm not sure if
Yeah.
you've seen his book.
Yeah.
I can show it to you this afternoon, Joe.
Joe, you should have this book. And
know, right?
the website itself is phenomenal because he's
Yeah.
been working with a kind of a guy who does tech stuff. So you can plug in, it has dates, so it can be a straight chronology, or you can do a search of some person, people, group. I mean, he's indexed it. So, I mean, it's a massive project that he has been working on really as a labor of love. He worked for the BRA for about 30 years. And then his hobby was compiling this chronology of Boston history, which he then published in this great book, When in Boston. Bill Fowler said this book belongs on every bar in the city because it can settle any argument. And then he's gone on with it. So it would be really worthwhile to have us do something. I mean, this could be one of the things the commission does, to say this is a city thing. You have the city put it up on a website or the library. He's been shopping around for someone to do this for about 10 years now, as he's been still compiling the information.
Yeah, and I think the intent of his database is to have it be interactive so people can contribute.
Yes.
So it's not just like one view. It's it's to keep growing because the book only goes up to a certain point. But then, there's been history since then. So I think the intent of the website is just to keep it growing.
And so last I saw, the website was not publicly accessible. He's been sharing it with the institutions that he's been sharing around to. So if you're Googling it on the side, you're not going to find it right now. He would be, I'm sure, thrilled to give you a demo. I know one of the reasons he has been shopping it around for so long is that it is a massive undertaking for an institution, and it would require some serious staffing and funding to support. So that's why it is still in the ether at the moment.
So just so folks know, the Boston.gov website uses a platform called Uppany, or is that our newsletter platform? That's our newsletter platform. So we use Drupal. There we go. Can't get them separate. Anyway, so Drupal has the structure of the Boston.gov website, and essentially in order to put something on Boston.gov, we really have to place it within the Drupal philosophy. So if we were to host it, and if it didn't fit inside of like those kind of widgets that Drupal has, it could become a potential issue with us being the host. And Kayla, I'm hoping you're going to bail me out on my lack of knowledge here.
Yeah, the archives uses, I don't know if you've all gone into our archive space catalog or Preservica. There are ways around that you can hook your URL into the city's, the Boston.gov, like a sub URL. So our Preservica has that city URL, but it's not hosted by the city. So it hooks in, but it's completely same with archive space catalog. It's hosted by Lyrasis. So we don't have to manage any of the design of it, the CSS. We can tell them what we want it to look like, but we don't host it.
Okay, well, that's excellent. I didn't realize that there was a workaround for that.
Yeah, there are options within the city if you need to do that.
Okay, Jordana?
We in the archives and special collections also considered helping Jim out with his database. And it's a very, very large undertaking because, as you say, it's not static. I think it would be pretty easy to create a complex database to house all of the information and put it up on the internet. The difficulty is the constant updating of it, which requires additional database functionality. It's not something you can just sort of stick up on the internet, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Although, yeah.
Thanks, Bob.
Well, can I just suggest that maybe rather than continuing to talk about capabilities, we maybe invite Jim to present to us what he has. And then it could be something the commission decides either to go forward with or recommend or something, rather than us all talking about possibilities.
That makes a lot of sense. Hennessy, is that something we can work on? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys have his contact information, I can reach out and then try to get him to our next meeting.
Yeah, I think my initial and only concern is we really want to make sure that our timeline component is considering really up to like yesterday. And if that's not something that Jim is focused on, then we would have to do the work to get it up to that point. That all being said, given that Jim may have done the lion's share of the work already, do we want to put a pause on the development of that spreadsheet because we may not need to? Or do we want to really focus on some other aspect of that? What do you all think? Because right now there's only 17 entries, so it's not like it's a robust database right now. And it sounds like Jim has more than 17 pieces of data that he's cataloged. But I want to make sure that we're, good.
I was going to say we could talk about what qualifies as going in here. I mean, I plugged in a couple, but I mean, at what point does the boundary between national and local, the Great Depression hits everywhere? Talk about its effects on the city of Boston and whatnot, but like, where does that go? What's the criteria? I sort of paused on adding more.
Yeah.
Because of that.
Yeah, I definitely added that component because I thought that there may be some that would be like a Boston celebration, like when Boston did something versus like, the independence of the United States, which was a much more national thing. But at the same time, it may not be relevant to the individual events. I think part of the goal of the timelines is so that in a relatively straightforward way, our other subcommittee can look at a list of events and go, here's what we need to be ready for, and starting to work towards something. If that's compiling information, if that's, reaching out to organizations, but this is an event, or this spreadsheet would be really, if it was used as it currently is, functioning mostly for that, just to kind of get people the future calendar of where we should be benchmarking events. To that end, I have a concern that the database that Jim has provided may be so much more than we need. So I'm wondering if there's a streamlined version of Jim's database that can stand beside the larger version of the database for folks like whether it be the commission website itself or the other subcommittee are not going to have to like be given, a massive database and be like, there it is, figure it out. But more like, this September, you have these things coming up. And then 5 years, we have these things to work on. Is there some sort of like either parallel system or streamlined version of Jim's database that could potentially be what we can kind of help the other subcommittee with? Is kind of my vague question.
My other question was about, like, yes, we're going to stick to Boston for sure, but there are also events that take place that are sort of adjacent, that are connected. Sacco and Vanzetti, for example, the trials in Dedham, events are here. Like, where does that fall? Is that is that something Boston talks about?
Mm-hmm.
Or is that in Norfolk County?
I think that's for all of us to decide. So what do you all think?
Are we looking at like a specific time period, like in the next things that are happening in the next 10 years, like anniversaries? Or is it something that is open like for the next like 50 years, what's coming up in terms of commemorations? Like, should we limit like what we're looking at? Like, because the 400th is in 6 years from now. Like, how far beyond that are we going to go?
there's an actual end date to the commission itself, to all of our roles. However, we could also consider this for, future us. Hennessy, what's our sunset date?
I think it's December 31st, 2031.
2031, so it's right after the 400. Okay, so we should be targeting the bulk of our work towards pre 2030, really, because we'll have a 1 year of kind of postmortem. So 2030, 2031. And if we are helpful to the folks who are going to be doing this down the road, we could kind of pregame some of it for them. Do we want to agree as a committee that we're going to really focus on anniversaries within the time period of the commission, just to give us some boundaries? I'm seeing general nods. Okay. So we'll stick with that. I mean, obviously with every 5-10 years, there's another celebration coming up. So we'll have that in mind too. Okay, so I would love to hear more thoughts on the continuity or continuing the timelines spreadsheet that we have right now versus leaving it until we have a chance to talk to Jim.
When I was working on it, I was running into putting things that had already had their anniversary recently. So I'm like, do we continue doing that? And then I was constantly using Jim's book. So I mean, I think might be nice to talk to Jim first and see what he has, like if he could provide us something from his database.
Okay.
Considering the database isn't live on the web yet, so.
I think does his timelines include things like the number 17 on here, the gay marriage legalization in Massachusetts? Would that be inclusive of his timeline? Okay. All right. Because that's the kind of stuff that I want to make sure we don't miss, because it's going to be very glaringly obvious down the road. All right. So if that's the kind of scope of his work, then I feel comfortable waiting a little bit. But it wouldn't be the worst thing if we had specialized knowledge keepers within this group and elsewhere contributing to this, because I don't know the important dates on the Native history calendar, for example, and I feel like that would be an important thing that if Jim hasn't done, we could really do some legwork on that, for example. But I think we'd have to try to talk to Jim to find out where his gaps may be that we can work to fill, even within the commission, because I think we have at least 3 or 4 tribal members on the commission. So that would be really just at one point we'd be able to probably do internally. Okay. Yeah, Caroline.
Yeah, thanks for this. I think that it feels like it could be useful to keep populating the timeline, if only to allow members to engage in thinking about what is it, what is it that, what will our goals be for a timeline, and refining that so that when we do meet with Jim, we can kind of have that thinking activated and be able to have a meaningful conversation as to the extent to which his work overlaps and meets with our own, so that we can both make a decision about, Jim's database, yay or nay, but also move forward with clarifying where we're headed.
Okay, I like that idea. One of the things I was hoping to do in this month's meeting was discuss whether or not we open the timeline link up to the rest of the commission members to hear their take on the timeline. Would that be a good both and, where we await Jim's time with us and also see if we can populate it with additional entries that may or may not be in Jim's, and we'll find that out next. Okay. Do we have to vote on these things? Is that not really what we do? Or do we just vote to like adjourn and meet? And that's about it?
I think so, because technically it doesn't say that you guys will vote. It
Okay.
says that things that you put together will be voted on by the larger commission.
Okay, cool. I just want to make sure I'm not like skipping over parts of this if we really have to do things. Okay. So does everyone feel generally comfortable with nods of head proceeding with that? Okay. So Hennessy, you and I can work on getting it to the rest of the commission members. Okay.
Yep.
Not the general public though.
Not yet.
All right, sounds good. All right, are we good with the timeline aspect of the agenda? Cool. Moving on then to archives. A lot of work has been put into this. Thank you all for contributing to that. I'm sure there's more that can be added. Does anybody have any comments, concerns about the existing database that we've all had a chance to look at so far before we move on to what we're going to do with it next? Okay. Then related to what we just discussed, does everyone feel comfortable unleashing it on the entire commission members to see what they can add to this, acknowledging that we are kind of the archivist side of the commission? Okay. There was a tab at the bottom that was specific collections and subjects. I put in a, I think, not very helpful addition from archaeology side of a very specific archive that is tailored to one potential topic. And I'm curious if you all think that that could be helpful, or if we need to do a better job of explaining what that tab is for. Because obviously there's archives and then there's subjects, and I think some people are unaware of some of the things and topics and themes that our archives really celebrate. And I thought that that could be a helpful place to start putting some of those things. But I don't know if, for example, the City of Boston Archives want to go through and put all of their, or if that's even possible, of the different types of archives that you all have. Because I would do it by site or topic, and I don't know if that works with other archives. So just leaving that open for discussion if anyone has any thoughts, ideas, or comments.
Archives grid? Anybody?
Explain.
I'm looking for I don't have personal knowledge about this, but many of us participate in a finding aid conglomeration called Archives Grid.
Okay.
And a lot of different archives, not so much historical society as a museum, but traditional archives put their collections in there. So we could do a small analysis of Archives Grid and see what people come up with. But I'm not sure. I don't know how to like download things from there because but anyway, I'll put a link in the chat to Archives Grid.
Okay. Yeah, I'd really love for this to be a celebration also of the non-traditional archive. So I don't know how to capture that. Whether it be, you know, the historians of the tribes and the non-archives archives that are out there, the zine collections and things like that are really important parts of the story of this. The NACOB's newspaper archive that they have from their printing press, things like that I think are not quite captured here. Like I wouldn't want to put NACOB necessarily as an archive, but there are archival collections at NACOB that I think are really important to this list. And I'm curious how you all may consider capturing that data. And NACOB is the Native American Indian Center of Boston.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of history holders across the city that that wouldn't you might not necessarily put it into the bucket of traditional archive, but NICOB being one of them. And yeah, we should, I mean, I think if we use a big tent, you know, manner for creating these things, then we should definitely include them on the list.
I like the phrase history holders. And I think maybe we should consider using that either archives and history holders or history holders and archives, just as standard practice. I think that may help us be more forwardly open to those kinds of ideas.
Because, for example, churches usually hang on to their own records, and you know, and some church records end up in traditional archives, but not many. And usually it's like, you know, all of the Lutheran archives goes to like DePaul or whatever. So, you know, having knowledge of that would be helpful.
It would also be, I think, helpful to capture, I don't know the right phrase for it, but and I may be actually wrong in saying this, but I believe that Northeastern has a particular leaning towards Roxbury South End. Is that correct? Yeah, so like things like that, where it's like if we're looking for places to really start stories and research on Dorchester, go to UMass Boston, Roxbury, go to Northeastern, ideas like that, that could be a little bit more helpful to us, but also externally. I don't think that's general knowledge within the wider world. Any thoughts on how we could record that? That was what the point of the second tab in that spreadsheet was. That kind of archival subjects would be more like, you know, if you want, I'm not going to make any more examples, but you understand what I'm saying. I know that's a very vague topic, so I'm not sure how to really do that, but if I'm open to suggestions of how we can add that to what we're doing.
Carolyn.
Yeah, so last week, Giordana shared with me the beautiful archivals, I don't know what you call it, portal for Chinatown history that she had worked on. And I thought, wow, is that a great resource? And couldn't we benefit? Wouldn't it be meaningful for this group to do sort of one of those for each neighborhood in this city? You know, and I know Hennessy has on her desk the neighborhood booklets that were done in bicentennial. And I've been thinking, what's the equivalent of that? What's the equivalent of that for now? And I think it's not booklets, as much as I love them, because I'm an old-fashioned person. But I thought that the Chinatown resource you guys built was just exemplary, and I that was just exciting to me to think if we could do that for all the neighborhoods, that really would be a contribution. That doesn't cut across all the topics that you're asking about right now, Joe, but I think it would take us a long way toward that.
I think that sounds great. Jordana, can you share that in the chat?
I put it in.
Dory did.
Oh, sorry. I don't have that part open. I've got like so many windows.
So
thank you.
it's dry looking. But it is basically what we did was we went to a group of Chinatown based organizations and we said, what are you interested in doing? And they said, well, we're not sure where all of the pieces of Chinatown history are. And so we created this collections guide to various different, you know, but also including history holders that don't necessarily fall into the category of archives. Go ahead, Dory.
I'll also add too that the way we went about doing this, you know, we first met with the Chinatown Coalition, and then, you know, based on the feedback that we heard from them, we put together a survey first in English, and then had them edit it. And this was a way of just inviting people to tell us what collections or projects they wanted us to be aware of. And once the folks at the Chinatown Coalition were satisfied with it, we then translated it into simplified and traditional Chinese. And we disseminated this with the repositories that we know. We also sent it out to folks in the coalition and to, you know, cultural and social service agencies. And we also put out like paper flyers at the BPL branches and put out, you know, blogs. So this was a very, you know, kind of grassroots approach to populating this database. And I think, yeah, seconding Carolyn, I think if we wanted to do this more expansively, doing it at a neighborhood level, making sure that there are multilingual access points would be, I think, the way to do this. Yeah.
I think that would be amazing and a lot of work. Hennessy or whoever had I guess it would be Hennessy. is it possible to get a list of the booklets that were produced for last time to get an idea of how the city was broken up for that? Because I think that may be a nice kind of template, but the other thing is that there are non-neighborhood based communities that we would have to be considering. And I know that D&D does have some citywide but kind of cultural groups representation that we could begin by looking at what D&D has called out as separate, so that we can make sure that we also have those. But then from that list, we could potentially, as a group, add to. I'm not saying this very clearly. We need to start with a headlines of the neighborhoods and community groups, and then build from there. But Dory, can you explain a little more about like what kind of this doesn't sound like it was a quick process by any stretch of the imagination, and we could end up with 15 plus of these.
Yeah. This took all told from scratch to finish, I would say about 2 years. We also now have a template for doing this. And you know, we worked with focus groups to revise as you know, throughout the process. We also held a community feedback session. So, and also this was one of a number of projects that the Boston Research Center was working on. So that also, I think, stretched the process a little bit.
So do we feel comfortable making this something that we're going to pursue? It may not be something we can commit to fully, given that we don't really know what we're really stepping into, but at least pursuing down to start looking at what would be the kind of archival subgroups that we would be trying to collect, and then ultimately trying to work towards becoming a clearinghouse of archival information and really what are we calling it? History holders and storytellers. Because I think that could be amazing. Okay.
I think this is a worthwhile line of inquiry for us to take on. Especially because the templates are already created. So, you know, I mean, we already have the templates. Once it's filled out, the template feeds into structured data, which makes it easier for us to like put it all together. Okay. Or at least, you know, it should be in theory. And I know that the archival landscape is always changing. So, you know, but we could, even if we just like emailed the various different history holder institutions and said, what do you have? What would you like to include? You don't have to participate, but you know, if you wanted to, you know, here's a spot where you can fill out this form.
Okay. Can the form be shared so that we can like get a look at it and see if it's something we can kind of.
Give me a moment to excavate that.
Sure. It doesn't have to be right now, but
okay.
It might be something we can follow up with after the meeting. Just have that get shared amongst us, and then take a look at it and see how transferable it is to multiple communities. I don't know how it was structured. And Hennessy, we have the resources theoretically, at least, to translate, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. One thing we can do on the city side, with the resources that we have. Okay, so then I guess the next steps on that would be taking a look at the template that's been created, and also compiling a much more streamlined list of what these kind of subdivisions would look like. And after this meeting, because I feel like we're going to once again be going a little early, I can go through our D&D Department of Neighborhood Development list, which is by neighborhood and community groups, and at least get that going. And then from that, we can all contribute to that. I'm gonna make the archival subjects subtab. So if you're all looking at the spreadsheet, or when you do look at the spreadsheet, right now the first tab says archives, and that's really just like name an institution address. The second tab says archival subjects. instead of starting over from scratch, I'm going to turn that tab into exactly what we discussed. So that will be where you can go and look at those things. And I should have that done today with the headlines of the different community groups. And then if anybody can think of a separate group that we haven't really addressed in those things, then we can add to that. And then from there, we can figure out who are we targeting for those different populations to start compiling that kind of data. And then it sounds like in the end it would look a lot like what you all have made for Chinatown. Who was working on that? Northeastern? I saw BPL. Thank you all.
Boston Research Center.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Boston Research Center. It's great that we don't have to start from zero on a lot of these things, which is one of the great things about this commission. So even if it's literally just a link that says Chinatown History Directory, go to the existing Chinatown History Directory. There's no point in doing that over again. We could just put a link to that. I feel like that would be a real benefit to anybody researching Boston, and the communities here. Okay. Anything else anyone would like to add to that discussion? Okay. So in addition to that kind of headline version, are we also circulating the archives list to the rest of the commission? Okay, we'll go with that. All right, so we'll do that both. Just writing notes. All right. Moving on to the next agenda. I feel like the gaps discussion is something that we've been kind of doing throughout this whole discussion. So I'm going to move past that unless anybody has a specific thing to address in that. Okay, seeing none. I think we've also covered next steps pretty thoroughly, but just to kind of reiterate, because I don't want to take up more time than we need, we're going to circulate the archives and the timelines list amongst the commission members. We're going to start a more neighborhood cultural list of headlines for and we'll come up with a better name for that at some point for the archives data. And we'll reach out to Jim. Is that his name? I've never met him. Jim, for follow up and hopefully get him to be able to come to the next meeting, which is already scheduled, Hennessy. Okay. And oh, I had a question related to all of this. Hennessy, do we have social media for the Commemoration Commission?
We don't. And that's actually something that was brought up in the Events and Trails subcommittee. I think we should start setting it up.
Yeah.
Right now it's only been through the BLC's stuff, but I did set up a newsletter so people can sign up on the website. There's nothing there yet. But I set up a newsletter. I think it'd be great if we could get an Instagram account, maybe a TikTok, because that could be a good way to start doing like advertising.
Sure.
So yeah, okay, I can do that. Put that on my to-do list.
I think everything that we're working on is eventually going to have a public engagement slash getting more information from the public. Because I know we're gonna forget stuff, and it'd be really great to have social media that can help spread that around, especially as we kind of start breaking it down into topics. Okay.
I just wanted to add one thing. Totally non sequitur, but one of the elements that Jim Vrabel's database, his Boston History database, has is all the trails.
Oh,
So
great.
he's collected all of them and has all of them cataloged.
Great. That's gonna save some work for some people in the other subcommittee for sure. All right, so we've done next steps. Are we ready for public comment? Does anybody, before we do that, does anybody have anything else you want to add to the conversation? Because public comment's kind of the second to last thing before adjournment.
I just remembered this, but because everything pre-COVID is kind of a continuum in my mind, but Carolyn might remember as well. We were both involved with the People's History of Dorchester group that met a few times, and we were trying to do the same thing just for Dorchester with coming up with kind of like a LibGuide for how you would find historical resources for Dorchester. So there may be little groups within the neighborhoods where this work is already taking place. So another reason we might not have to reinvent the wheel. I can go back through my emails and see if I can find anything. I unfortunately think with COVID, nothing really happened with the group. There was no end result, but the conversations had already started.
Great.
Thanks, Kayla. Yeah, no, we do have at least one LibGuide on Dorchester history and another one on Columbia Point. So, I mean, we've essentially started this, but I really like the format. I mean, the format that you use, Jordana, is definitely more accessible than a LibGuide. I agree that ultimately it'd be cool to do something more visual, even just slightly more visual for a slightly broader audience. But yeah, we definitely have the kernels to begin this, and I'm excited about what we all could achieve together with this strong kind of neighborhood and other topic framework. Because I think a lot of this, I think we each alone have like a handle on these major chunks, and once we match them up, of course there will be gaps, but I think it might be less than we think. If we just have a strong framework to plug in, then I think we can really get some good momentum, and I'm really excited about what we could do together.
Yeah, me too. I think one thing to keep in mind, I don't think we want to go into it yet, but beyond I think the tendency for things like commemoration is to look at the historical community groups, but I think it would be really nice to know from folks when we start to look at the list of groups and neighborhoods that we're thinking about, who really are the kind of key hubs of people and information that we could reach out to beyond, you know, the historical society of each neighborhood, if there are one. Those are obvious good choices, but there's other people too that are and I think any experience that people can bring to that once we get to that stage, I think will be really helpful to kind of talk about. We were doing the slavery exhibit in Faneuil Hall. We had a long conversation about like, how do we reach the most number of people with the fewest number of people directly talked to during COVID? So like that was the real challenge. But I think that's a similar thing that we want to work on here for this is maximizing the connectivity of people by focusing on people that have strong connectivity that kind of aggregate a lot of ideas. All right. Anything else before we go to, yeah.
I just wanted to second that. Having wandered into neighborhood history in the neighborhood I live in, there are certainly factions within each neighborhood, and one can get really bogged down in really local politics about who belongs and who does not belong. Yeah. So I absolutely agree with you, Joe, that we really need to cast a wide net and not just go with the folks who have incorporated or something like that.
As the president of a neighborhood historical society, I guess I third that.
All right. Anyone else? All right. I don't know if we have public, but do we have public comment? How long do we let?
I don't think we have public.
Okay. No, we have people that aren't like actual members that have like a degree of separation.
Yes,
exactly. Okay. Verifying that we can end early without repercussion. Is that true?
Yes, that's
okay. Just want to make sure.
Yep. Jordana, did you have something to say?
Have the folks that have they been invited to these meetings?
Which folks?
The various different archives and that we have on the list. And, you know, just thinking about whether or not we should.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
We're going to need some serious emails. So I'm going to put in a column for contacts. So please. And just put like covered by or something that says that like we already are represented on the commission versus another email that we can reach out to and spam them. All right, thanks for that. All right, do we need a motion to adjourn? Is that the official words? Okay, I
Mhm.
think I saw Bob's motion. Do we have a second? Wait, do I do the motion? I've never done Robert's rules before, so
You
like,
don't actually need a second
oh, we
for
don't.
adjournment, no.
Yeah,
Okay.
there you go.
The vote?
So, yeah, all right,
Right.
so moved.
Thanks
Thanks.
all.
When is the next meeting, please?
Thanks,
The
Emily.
next meeting is April, it's like very close, it's 1 month, so let me just, calendar's not working for some reason, let me just double open it on my phone.
Is it the same link each time?
It's if you have the calendar, the commemoration commission.
I think it's April 3rd.
That I shared, yeah, it's the 3rd, so
Yep.
it's about a
And we'll put the link in the event too, so people can click
Yeah.
through it on their calendar.
yes.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Bye.